Hello there, gamerinos and gamerinas. Welcome to UnicornStorm. This is Rady, and today I'm going to tell you whether or not Tormented Souls is worth your while. The game describes itself as a return to classic survival horror, in the vein of Silent Hill and Resident Evil. We have to navigate through a maze of locked doors and blocked off paths, fight horrible abominations, while watching everything through a fixed camera perspective and struggling with limited ammunition, healing, and even opportunities to save. Sounds like a refreshing idea after the not so scary Resident Evil 8. So how does this game fare? Well, it's a mixed bag. We start off with a little intro cutscene with a horrible frame rate and really low resolution, or maybe it's just a bad rendering. And then we get our first piece of full frontal nudity. Oh great. Yeah, we aren't even 5 minutes into the game and our female lead has already been exploited.
For the male gaze.
And speaking of gays, well, that's nothing she can do too well anymore, because someone cut out one of her eyes. And yeah, the cutscene looks a bit weird. The animations aren't really that great. The game kinda looks like a PS3 game, at least during cutscenes or close-ups. But for the main portion of the gameplay, it isn't really too bad. It works quite well, to be honest. So yeah, expect canned and uncanny animations, bad but sadly not hilarious voice acting,
Some soup. God feeds my spirit, but I have
and
to
a
feed my
weird and artificial and not that competently told story. But well, we are not here for a good story or a movie-like experience, even though this game is on PS5. Though it is a mid-budget game, so we can excuse a few shortcomings. What we are really here for is the atmosphere, is the horror and the dread of opening the next door, of fearing not to have enough ammunition to deal with the monsters in the next room, or not being able to heal in time. The feeling of regret whenever you use one of your limited save items, because you don't know how many there really are and when you'll find the next one, and how many difficult challenges you have to overcome until you get to save again. And yeah, the game pretty much nails it. Pun intended, because you start with a nail gun. So you investigate a mansion-like hospital in search of a pair of twin sisters who were seemingly abducted, and you discover that some evil cult has carried out dark rituals and experimented on humans and the like. And now the hospital is full of their disfigured victims whose only drive is the urge to kill, or something like that. The game pretty much follows the blueprint of classic Resident Evil or Silent Hill. You are in a huge area, but most of the doors are locked, and there are only a few ways to go in the beginning. The game plays pretty non-linear, but you have to visit pretty much every room to get all the items you need to progress to the next area. But you want to examine every nook and cranny for extra health items or ammunition, or even weapon parts, because your nail gun takes a million hits to down even the most basic enemy type. And your enemies aren't slow zombies. They can effortlessly keep up with you and either have a wide attack range or are even capable of using ranged attacks. And this really sucks, because now the fixed camera perspective is an actual disadvantage to the player. In classic Resident Evil, you couldn't always see all the enemies in the room, but whenever you pressed the aim button, your character faced the nearest enemy, and as long as he wasn't above or below you, every shot you fired hit its mark. And the enemies themselves were slower than you and had to slowly walk up to you, so you had always enough time to react. And even though later there were some faster enemies, they still needed to get at least a bit closer to you, and then they needed to wind up their attack, so even then you had enough time to react to them. In this game, it's possible for an enemy to attack you while off screen. And even worse, it seems that their range attacks kinda have an auto-aim of their own. So when an enemy winds up to spit blood at you and you start to run away, he just turns with you and still hits you if you don't move exactly orthogonal to him the moment he spits the projectile. And since there's always an obstacle in your way, you more often than not get hit by a ranged attack because you just couldn't do anything about it. So yeah, the combat isn't the most enjoyable thing in this game. But well, it shouldn't be. I mean, I think enemies shouldn't use ranged attacks in a game with fixed camera angles, or at least they should announce them and then not lock onto you so that you can actually evade the attack. But yeah, the game wants you to dread the enemies, wants you to be scared of fighting them. And well, in other games, this works pretty well. So I'm not huge into Silent Hill, but in Resident Evil, I pretty often avoided fighting. I kited the zombies to where I could easily move around them. I planned my route ahead so that I didn't have to face enemies on the way and only moved through corridors that I already cleared. And while you can do this a bit in this game and open up shortcuts and sometimes have more than one way to approach a location, since the enemies are quite fast and corridors and hallways are narrow and cramped, you can't really step around the enemies. And even if you down them, you can't just walk over them as long as they're still alive. So you have to kill most of the enemies you see. And depending on the route you take, this can lead to some problems when you don't find enough ammunition to deal with all the monsters. But well, that's par for the course with survival horror games. While the enemy design is pretty disgusting and creative, with all the amalgamations of human flesh and hospital equipment, yeah, there are some pretty neat enemy designs, the true horror comes from how the game implements darkness. So the game world looks pretty stunning and is highly detailed, and the developers put a lot of attention into how the light and shadow interacts with the environment. And while it's not always working perfectly, it really creates a thick and rich atmosphere. Half of the rooms you come across are shrouded in darkness, and you only have a small lighter to see what's around you. And so you have to carefully navigate through the rooms while shadows play tricks on you and objects and furniture just emerge from the shadows. If you stay too long in complete darkness, you lose the game. So you always want to stay in a lit room or equip your lighter. But you can't equip a weapon in addition to your lighter. So it seems we're playing by Doom 3 rules. If you do put the lighter away in a dark room, you can't do anything. You can't interact with objects, you can't even fire a weapon, because your character can't see shit. That means if you're in a dark room with an enemy, there's no way to fight it. You have to flee. And these rooms are the most stressful, because again, enemies are fast and have a wide range of attack, and you can't take much punishment. Sometimes there's a switch in the room to turn on the light. Sometimes you can light some candles, but sometimes you just have to pray that the enemy doesn't get you. And yeah, it's quite exhilarating. The game creates a good, horrifying atmosphere. It has a lot of flaws, but it does what it sets out to do pretty well. The hospital mansion is a beautiful place, and there's so much detail in every room. The enemies are disgusting. You have to solve a million puzzles, and well, they are a bit artificial and arbitrary, and I guess that's standard for the genre, but it feels a bit more contrived in this game. It's also a bit unclear whether this is a supernatural or a quote-unquote science fiction horror story, but maybe everything will get clear later in the game. There are some things the game refined from its predecessors, like sorting related documents together so that you can quickly reread all the diary entries from the same person. But then it went 3 steps back from some already working conventions. Like, whenever you open up the map, you don't see your own position. And you don't see if there's anything left to find in a room or not. It's not the worst thing to do, but, well, at least show me what room I am in. You can find some maps on the walls and they show you your position, but the map in your inventory only shows you a blueprint of the mansion. But yeah, the game is a bit clunky, but it provides a good portion of horror, and I really love the atmosphere. I don't really care for the story, and the enemies lose their charm pretty quickly, but the whole light and darkness mechanic keeps the tension going. So if you're into classic survival horror, maybe give this one a try. And if you think, well, Resident Evil 8 was quite scary, stay away from this. You will shit your pants. And with that, I bid you adieu. Have a great day, and I hope to see you again on the next game.